Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Miles, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you're having a pleasant day, man. It's Wednesday. Let's go. You couldn't ask for a better Wednesday here in the nation's capital. It's in the 80s. We're enjoying these last coveted days of, it's not even summer. This is heading to the fall. We're in October. But getting this great weather for what it's worth. I hope that your weather is good. You're having a good time as well. Want to give a shout out to the student coordinating committees at American University today, Sister Irene Kalis and distinguished guest Dr. Mahal and Sister Asia. I was on a panel today. The panel was Islamophobia and surveillance, and we're going to talk about that today. Today's topic is why is the Black Muslim community still struggling? This is actually meant to be a larger conversation, much more robust conversation, really beginning to detail what it is that's going on and what we're producing out of the Black intelligentsia community. When I say the Black intelligentsia community, what I'm framing is what gives rise to the Black Muslim community, but also gives pause and preservation protection to the non-Black Muslim community here in the United States. Um, this is kind of a longer talk. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be brief today. I don't plan to go an hour though. This topic's probably part one, part two, but I don't want things to get convoluted in the idea of what I'm about to speak about. And I think the other thing that needs to be stated even more clearly is just the fact that this comes from a place of love. Too long and too often that the African American community, the African American Muslim community, has been presented as disjointed and or somehow not connected to the overall African American community. I think we need to address that as well, because in some regards they're going through the same thing as the Black Muslim community here in the United States. That African Americans, Black Muslims, if you will, have an identity or identifier in this space called Islam, but also has a place and a presence and an importance and a relevance in the whole scope of the Black church. That the Black church in the last, I want to say, maybe 15 to 17 years, the Black church has begun to take hits in the context of what is it exactly we're doing for our community, not a congregation, not our followers, but overall what are we doing for our communities. And I thought that was something that began to come out in the discussion that I had when I was part of this lecture panel. Let's be honest, man. In some regards I was saddened, in some regards I was inspired, but in some regards I was left neutral. I'm in between. At 56 years old, there's a threshold in the Muslim community, and particularly African American Muslim community. There's a threshold whereby if we haven't established something, I want to say in the mid 20s or 30s, it's very hard to establish it late. Why? Because we deal with, of course, all the accoutrements of growing older, but also growing older in a space of religious identity. And when I was talking to the students and staff today about Islamophobia and also speaking about surveillance, I had to really come at the kind of hard, just because I think they needed to understand that these things are real, not just for the Muslim community, but for the non-Muslim community. We see a direct disconnect with the removal of, I want to say, religious ethic or religious ethos and what it's being replaced with. That people who don't have direction, don't have guidance, but also don't have ethic and a moral compass, it begins to wear on us. Then the religious community has struggled for quite some time, particularly African American religious community, because we're the ones who have been held to the fire. We're the ones, boots on the ground for so many years, that the boots on the ground idea and phraseology doesn't work for a lot of people. That somehow, some way, we are not part of the overall solution. And as time moves forward, we're not even considered part of the solution. We are, by merit and by default in many regards, invisible. That we are called upon for our services, not recognized for our contributions. So we're going to take a small break. I'm going to make sure that we get the show started off. Sister Satana may be joining us. I know she's busy doing things, and I can respect that. So I'm going to ask everybody, hold on. I'm going to be right back, and we're going to get in here. I see some people coming into the Shout Out Show. Some of my Shout Out Show families here already. Don't you move. We will be right back.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
All right, we're back. Before we get started, I want to make sure I give our shout out ShOUT soldiers some love. A Hall of Famers, if you will. I want to give a shout out to Sister Reed. She says, hello, family. How you doing, Sister Reed? Good to see you. I need to holler at you. Need a favor. Hope you don't mind. I'll try and reach you after the show. Hope things are going well with you, Jawan, Derek. I hope that peace and blessings are abound in your life and mercy is plentiful. Good to see you on the show. My main man, Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Beloved, how are you doing? How are things going in Toronto? How are you? How is your family? How is your health? Thank you so much for joining us here on the Shout Out Show. What's the Shout Out Show with the Shout Out Show soldiers, the stars, if you will, stars in the building. We appreciate you, man. And for those who are checking out, he is extremely consistent, just like everybody else here on the Shout Out Show. He was known as the ambassador to the Shout Out Show. He is in charge of quality control on this side of the border and the next side of the border. Very excited, as always, to see you all talk. And my little brother, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I gotta talk to you, man. I bought your niece a cell phone. I've been depressed ever since. We'll talk about it later. Good to see you, Jay. Appreciate you making your way to the show. As always, man, peace and blessings to you and the Thomas family, my nephews, nieces, and everybody on that side of the game. Good to see you, man. Hope everything is going well. Hey, big brother Bilal Salahuddin and his princess sister Sonia Dalton Salahuddin. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What's going on with you, soldier? Thank you so much. Bilal tunes in. Are we going live today? Yes, we're going live. We're going to be going live this week, next week. I do have a tour scheduled over in the UK, so I'm probably going to pre-tape that show. Inshallah, I hope you don't mind. I actually may do it live from the UK. I'm going to take that back. I might do it live from the UK. But the other show I have to pre-tape just because traveling and dealing with different demographics and logistics, trying to get Wi-Fi can be a little sketchy. But I will not leave you while I'm overseas, and I pray that you do not leave me. What I would like to do also is possibly have a private screening with the Shout Out Show family of my new show, Once Upon a Time, Fill in the Blank. My new show, Once Upon a Time, Fill in the Blank. Love to get all of us on the Zoom and take a look at it, maybe premiere it. Okay? My main man from South Kakalaki, brother Eric Carter, brother Eric. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Good to see you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Also want to give a shout out to my main man Mark Kennedy. He couldn't make it today, but he hit me on the text. Peace and blessings to you, Mark. Hope everybody is doing well. So, but like I said, we're here. Well, I got you, brother. I got you. And my main man Eric, thank you so much, man. So let me set let me give you the setting for today's topic, which is why are Black Muslims still struggling. Now, this is not all Black Muslims struggling. This is not that. But I mean, as a collective, I felt that we could inherently be doing better. And it's also the argument with the African American community that we could be doing better. And it's also the argument with the non-Black immigrant Muslim community, that we could all be doing better. I had a opportunity to speak at American University earlier today. I was invited to be part of a panel. In that panel was stuff. It was discussing Islamophobia and surveillance. Again, that's Islamophobia and surveillance. I was on with a filmmaker and another academic, and I did something normally I don't do. And what it is that I didn't really take time to read the room. And I'm gonna encourage everybody here on the show. Sometimes you don't want to read the room. You're gonna have to go with whatever is that first emotion that you go with. You're gonna need to go with that emotion. So we were talking about Islamophobia, surveillance, and things of that nature. And it occurred to me, if I didn't say something, then the whole moment would be lost. That Islamophobia was being talked about from the 9/11 aspect, maybe into the early 90s, late 80s, talking about surveillance of Muslims. And I did not read the room, and I'm glad I didn't read the room. And I had to say to them, I said, the biggest, up till 9/11, the biggest, if you will, act of domestic terrorism was actually with African American Muslims. Two groups, Nation of Islam, and also the Hanafi Muslims that were located on 16th Street. Now, for those that don't know, this was called in 1973 the Hanafi Massacre. The Hanafi Massacre. What had happened was Nation of Islam brothers were trying to kill a brother named Imam Khalis. They were trying to kill Khalis because at this point in time, he had infiltrated the Nation of Islam. He had gotten into the favor of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a principal of one of the schools. And what he was doing there was he was trying to turn people away from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and at one point in time, and it's been verified that he wrote a letter disparaging Honorable Elijah Muhammad, saying he was a fraud, he was a trickster, and he sent out to all the ministers throughout the United States. And a group of men known as the Black Mafia out of Philadelphia, like, we're going to kill him. They came down to Washington, D.C., and they killed 7 people. Babies included, drowning babies, shot second wives, they killed 7 people. Let's just say it was a massacre. What they don't talk about often is that this was the result of Islamically what you would look at as COINTELPRO. That Imam Khalis, that was leading the Hanafi movement here in the United States, was under the auspices of a Bengali scholar who influenced him to infiltrate the Nation of Islam and do these things, to destabilize the Nation of Islam under the auspices of bringing these poor, lost black souls to the real Islam. Anybody listening to this could tell you that the ending was not going to be well. I don't condone violence. I don't do that. Loss of life is unacceptable. But they don't talk about the violence that was perpetrated in this situation. Because when you tear people away from a very, very foundational understanding of love of God, love of self, love of Islam, even though they don't have all the academic accoutrements, they may not understand fiqh and Islamic sciences, there's something to be spoken about and related to, that people have a genuine love, an authentic love of this thing that changes their life, that changes their lifestyle, that alters their ethic, that increases their morality, that frames family for them. These are very, very important things, and this was, violently disrupted. And I sat there going, as I began to speak, I was like, a lot of people don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. A lot of people had no idea what I was talking about. Because African American Muslims, for a lot of people, did not exist in 1973 or beyond, unless it's in the auspices of those crazy people trying to practice Islam. I don't refer to them as those crazy people. Those are my brothers. I love them. Those are my sisters. I love them. The miracle of the Nation of Islam is that they promote an Islamic ideology and you can talk about correctness or not, but you have to talk about effectiveness. That we're not talking enough about the effectiveness that grows this movement. And it's the same thing with the African American community, because a lot of times we haven't had movers and shakers since the 60s. We haven't had movers and shakers like a Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers. We haven't had movers and shakers like Marcus Garvey. We haven't had movers and shakers like Malcolm X, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Louis Farrakhan, Muhammad Ali. We have not put out those movers and shakers, and there are a lot of reasons, because that type of courage is not something that you can find in a wholesale situation. That these things are generational, and the conditions, if you will, are generational as well. That those conditions, if you will, produce this type of bravery. It framed a certain type of cowardice. It built a certain type of masculinity. It framed the gentleness and the intellect of a particular type of femininity of that time. And if you mess with it at that time, yes, there were dire consequences. But the thing that's interesting is, if we are the holders, if you will, if we're the holders of an Islam or a religious ideology that moves us from the prisons, that moves us off the drugs, that has us talking about do for self, where is it now? Why are we not the people who are leading industry? Why are we not the people who are talking about Islam in a holistic way? And it means that this is a lived experience that we're talking about. These are not aspects of, I don't know, brothers and sisters, the foundational, give me the 5 pillars, things that we're not talking about that. We're talking about an Islam which in many regards states clearly, without the benefit of hadith, states clearly that you have to love your brothers and sisters. You have to love the poor. You have to fight oppression. That we learn to fight oppression without the benefit of hadith, without the benefit of fiqh, because it made intellectually and religiously good sense and good common business. I'm going to stop right there because we haven't been able to do that. We've had a black president we had a black president. Shout out to Obama. But Obama, in many regards, in the framing of being a political figure, outside of being the first black president, where's the contributions? Healthcare, yes. But I'm talking long-term cultural contributions. That Barack Obama now should be much the same as if a king was not assassinated, or a Malcolm X was still living, or Muhammad Ali had longer life. That the things that he did, we should be able to refer to them. In years down the road, when there's no Obama, we can say these are the effects of that thing. It is troubling that we have not. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Sister Sonia. She said society is apathetic. I think it's worse than being apathetic. It's not even being apathetic. It's not being indifferent. It's that the things that are being put out here in terms of procedural understanding and how we do law, just protests and things like that, it's very gimmicky. It's very gimmicky. Society has lost its own authenticity. We lack the instruments to check our own selves these days. That I was talking to a group of people, a group of Muslims and non-Muslims. I said, these are the things that you need to know about. That there was a Hanafi massacre in 1973. It was 77, 16th Street Northwest, right around the corner from my grandmother's house. We knew it here. It shocked the city because at that point in time, we had nothing but good things to say about the Muslims. And now we are looking at Muslims kill each other, and we have literally no understanding. We can't frame it. It's heartbreaking. We talk about Islamophobia, right? We talk about Islamophobia a lot of times, And the reason why we're still talking about Islamophobia is because we perpetuate the damn word. The people who practice Islamophobia the most are Muslims. Book it, I said it. Book it, I said it. And the whole idea of the pathology of the Islamophobe, it's garbage. I'm going to tell you what real Islamophobia is. Are you ready? This is the real Islamophobia. Islamophobia is this: that there are people who watch us not practice our religion correctly. Dig that. These are people who know we're already broken, that our communities don't connect, that we fight and we have wars. You go overseas and we see the violence perpetrated by Muslims against other Muslims. We still have a Shia Sunni conflict. These are the things that let you know that when the people come and get us, we are just like fish in a bucket. We're fish in a barrel, fish in a bucket. We're easily got. And for a very long time, the African American and the African American Muslim identity were unique because clearly we grew up knowing the game. We grew up knowing the game. We know the game coming out of the cotton fields. That this guy right here has no power unless you give them an opening. Shout out. Shaitan is a lot of things, but Shaitan is consistent. And the powers that be, they line up with Shaitan, and they are consistent because they know that on their own merits, that they're extremely lazy. On their own merits, they're extremely uncreative. But on their own merits, they know if they watch us enough and they push things to the middle of our conversation, they push things to the middle of our dialogues, they will realize, sitting back, that we're fractured. That all the things that we put in these pamphlets and these flowery allegories about Islam don't mean jack if you don't feed the poor. Doesn't mean jack if you don't take care of the kids. It doesn't mean anything. That's the real Islamophobia. It's the fear of practicing your religion the correct way. And this is a very interior, insular meaning I'm giving you. But it's the same thing for other churches. The Christian church and the Jewish church. All of them have these same episodes of aberrations, but we're under the thing. Why? Because we're beating the drum the loudest. In the United States, we're telling people, look at me, I'm okay. I'm a Muslim, I'm okay. Why are we doing that? I've never had to validate myself as a Muslim. Ever. Ever, ever. People who are around me accept me and accept this is the part of what I do, and we've never had any problems. I have plenty of brothers and sisters who are not Muslim. They're religious folks. I accept what they do. And if we have a problem with something, we sit down and we talk about it. But for the most part, I accept what they do. This is a part of your religious identity. Not perfection, but a part of your religious identity. And I think over and over, as I was talking today, I think the thing that is beginning to haunt us, particularly in the African American Muslim community now, is that we've become like some of the immigrant community. Not all of them, because some of the immigrant community is amazing, dynamic. They are creative. But a large portion is like a large portion of us. They sit back waiting for something to happen. We are like it's like an episode of Hee Haw. The two white guys are sitting around, they go, it says, hey, is it raining outside? And the other guy goes, I don't know. Why don't you call the dog in and see if he's wet? We have been calling the dog in to see if he's wet, not going out to see if it's raining. Not going out and spend time to say what the clouds look like. So we can report, we can forecast and say these are the things that may be important down the road. And even add on to this. But it's just the idea that I know in the WD Muhammad community, which I love. But at times I've had problems with because I felt like we weren't progressive like we needed to be. And if you understand the Muslim Ummah, a Muslim Ummah that doesn't necessarily fully accept you, you know, people are marking your time. Boards are going to change. boards are going to change, and advisors are going to change, and the thematics are going to change. And I've seen this happen at masjids that were African American masjids, and all of a sudden there was an African masjid. Not African American, it was an African masjid. And there was a Pakistani masjid. And it was really along the lines of who could fiscally take care of the masjid. But that was years ago. Now you're talking about people who are talking about the foreboding ideology of the mosque, or in some regards other Christian church moving forward. I'll give you a chance. I was just reading about the Pope. The Pope, and beginning to loosen up to the idea of identifying or acknowledging, to a certain point, same-sex marriages. Taking on topics that you would see normally on IG. Body shaming. Why? Because these are popular topics. These are topics that are win-win in the conversation with bringing people back to the church. In our community, we have a problem. And it's a dual problem. The indigenous Muslim, black Muslim community, and the non-Muslim, the non-indigenous Muslim, immigrant Muslim. And here's the thing. In one camp, the indigenous Muslims, we don't have any youth. And in the immigrant space over here, they have youth, but the youth, in large regards, in many cases, don't have direction. And so the foreboding of having religious identity, it doesn't buffer them for the things that are out there in life. So someone's bound to have a hadith of Drake, a hadith of Lil Wayne, you know what I mean, a fiqh of 50 cents. They're gonna have these things, and fundamentally, we have nothing to give them. We talk about we talk about, hey, we talk about the Quran, we talk about these things mean little or nothing unless that Quran is going to literally change my heart and deal with some of the things that I'm dealing with at a certain point in time. That it can't be a fable. A tall tale. It can't be some Aesop's fable where, the moral to the story is, because sometimes you don't get to the moral of the story. You may die and not get to the moral of the story of your life and what you meant, or what you mean, or what your purpose is in life. And I'm like, these are real issues that have been abound for the last couple of years. Let me even throw this out. That in this interchange, as I was sitting at American University, it hit me that the conversation about African American Muslims, black Muslims in the United States, and listening and da-da-da, it sounded oddly like what you would say at a funeral, or a janazah, or a wake. That this community, in some regards, is dead, but we don't know. Nobody tapped us on the shoulder and said, lay down. Several years ago, and I might be rehashing something, but I'm going to bring it back up. Several years ago, when Muhammad Ali passed away, I remember very well, I was flying I was doing a show in Memphis, and my plane was delayed, and it said that Muhammad Ali was sick. It was on CNN, but by the time I got to Memphis, it said that he had passed away, and I sent a text and may Allah bless the Ali family. And I went to his janazah, and I'm glad I went to his janazah. There were a lot of people there who, it was weird. They had agendas, but they couldn't hang it. They couldn't engage the agenda. That a lot of people had relationships with Muhammad Ali, but they found out through his death that Muhammad Ali was an extremely authentic man. He was an extremely special man. That his talk and the way he lived his life, it wasn't a didactic action. It was, this is who I am. He never said I was the smartest. He did say that I was the prettiest, but he never said I was the smartest. He never said I was the richest. The things, if you go back and watch what he talked about, He was giving dawah to the Muslim, the black man in the street, the white person that wanted to know about the Muslim and the black man in the street. And he was informing the world that you need to look at my story to really understand what this religion is about. That he's not studying in Al-Azhar. He is taking just a little, if you will, a little piece of this Islamic pill, if you will. This Islamic, Islamic, I want to say energy drink, if you will. It gives you wings. This is what we're talking about. You know, Muhammad Ali's Red Bull, for lack of a better word. And what I want you to understand is it's amazing. Because here he was, Muhammad Ali's janazah, and you know what people were asking? Who's going to lead us now? Who can we present to the non-Muslim public someone who they like, someone we like and love, someone they like and love? That was Muhammad Ali. Totally overlooking the fact that when Muhammad Ali came into the Nation of Islam, he was despised. People did not like him. They did not like the black Muslim movement. But I think that I want to make sure, and I'm going to take a break here in a minute, it's just the fact that clearly, from that perspective, producing that kind of spirit, where's it now? Where's it now? So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here on the ShOUT Show, talking about why black Muslims still suffering. We'll be right back. Yeah, so my first, I guess, introduction to convenient urgent care, they were providing masks and supplies for people who didn't have supplies during COVID. And I went to pick them up and was going to take them around to some of the local areas. And I ran into a brother named Ijaz Saeed. And as I began to talk to Ijaz, it was very, very clear that this brother had a vision for community service. Oftentimes, when you have urgent cares in a situation that they're not necessarily doing a prevention or education, he came up with the term "a home of the smart patient," and I understand what that means. It means that people really want to be in tune about their health, but at the same time, they also want to be in tune about the people who are providing health. This is a very organic relationship. And little did I know, a year or so later, I would actually have to call on their services when I was in dealing with some physical trauma, if you will. And I have to say, they held my hand and they took me through the process. The offerings of telehealth, the offerings of being able to walk in consistent. I was in pretty bad shape, but they treated me like I was the president of the United States, not that one, Obama. Okay, I'm joking. But what I want to say is the professionalism, the dedication, the care, compassion, and the consistency, all the things I just named, makes convenient urgent care the space you want to go to. 3 locations in the Houston area: Cypress, Pasadena, and Parker Road in Houston. But I want to say the overall conceptual understanding of convenient urgent care is that they care for their patients, even when the patients don't know how to care for themselves. Check them out. All right, shout out to convenient urgent care. I got 2 birthdays. The Rhodes twins, that'd be Mamie Rhodes and Maisie Rhodes. Their birthdays today. Please send some duas their way. Just so you know, Maisie Rhodes is JT's mom, and also my mom, my play mom, and we just hope that she's having a beautiful day along with her twin sister Mamie. So let me get to the wrap about this thing. I have several thoughts about why black Muslims are struggling. And this is important because if black Muslims are struggling, the Muslim Ummah here in the United States is struggling. Don't get it twisted. If this portion of Islam in the United States is not healthy, you may not understand it, but you're sicker than they are. Because clearly, the whole ideology of having boots on the ground in the context of building a reputable, meaningful, actionable type of Islam may not be from the sunnah of the Prophet, but I can excuse that because that was introduced late. It was introduced late. And I have to also say there has to be a reason that the Nation of Islam and Garvey and Lost Foundation, and there has to be a reason why they were allowed to flourish. We say Allah is the best of planners. There has to be a reason why they were allowed to flourish. And the reason they're allowed to flourish is because if you look at the timeline, they matured extremely quickly to, a Sunni tradition, not fully understanding or having a grasp or access to scholars who understood, and this is really, really important, not just scholars who understood Islam, but scholars who could craft the meaning and the relevance of Islam, looking around at the realities that they were dealing with, looking around at tenements, looking around at unemployment, looking around at drugs, alcohol, prostitution, that these are the things that Islam treated as social ills at this point in time. And I say social because there was a component of the African American community back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s that a social allegory had to be established for them to lift themselves up out of their condition. I've said many times that the Nation of Islam is a female strong-led organization because they understood infrastructure. Infrastructure in the fact that they didn't have, I want to say, the full slate to do the things that we see now, to build these matches. They opened schools, they opened temples, and this is something that happened repeatedly over and over and over again, and we see the foundation of that here. I go to Masjid Muhammad, which is formerly known as Muhammad's Mosque number 4. It is hysterical. Masjid Muhammad's Mosque number 12 in Philadelphia. They all have relevance in history. But if we are to really, really be honest with ourselves, those contributions in many regards get overlooked. That the African American Muslim community has caught themselves in the case of not trying to keep up with the Joneses, but definitely trying to keep up with the jihads. And while we may move towards Sunni tradition, and that's what we practice, you have a history of relevancy that gets you to that point that cannot be overlooked. I said earlier today, I was talking, as I heard people talk about the, and I don't like being in a situation where people are talking and the conversation's going this way, and then I had to subtly or not so subtly introduce folks that, we've been around a long time, and the difference or the problems between indigenous Muslims and immigrant Muslims has led to a great deal of mistrust that it is prevalent today. It is prevalent today. I'm putting it out there. I'm not going to lie. But why? Why is it still prevalent today? Why can't we move forward? We are much the same as the GOP in many regards. That the GOP knows who they can move out of the way, and they can afford to wait. And so the new Islamophobia, if you will, is that the people who have the information, they have the knowledge, they have the veritas of being able to build infrastructure, build communities, coalitions, those people are getting older now. And I like to say young folks are trying to step into the fold. They don't even know what the fold is. Clearly, if we don't have a meaningful, and I mean a deadly meaningful come to Jesus moment, what we're going to be talking about is the fact that we no longer have movements. We're only going to have, I don't even want to say it. I'm going to say it. We're quickly approaching a point where we no longer have movements out of our masses. We're to the point where our masses are not even masses anymore. They are monuments to what we used to be. They are subtle reminders that, at some point in time, the Muslims had it together for a little bit, and that's all people are going to realize. That's all they're going to know. Because there's no continuing history about who it is and what we do. That we have a blueprint, if you will, from Governor Ron DeSantis, which is I'll simply remove it out of the curriculum. And let me give you the game. If they remove Black history, if for 1 year they move it out of the game, they move it out of the curriculum, if you will, it's not there. You may have 3 to 4 years of students who go through the education system not knowing what those contributions are, not being able to access Black history and Black studies. And this is at the college level. We're not even talking about the high school level. We're not talking about where you really frame aspects of freedom, equality, justice, and equity. Where you're framing these things. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about on the collegiate level. Of course, this is public education level. Public education, think about it, is public information. The two don't vary. They don't vary. They don't. I want to say they don't vary too much. And over, I think that we should begin to look at what are the alternatives. Now, let me give a shout out. Roberto Rashid. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Says that's why we must educate our own. Roberto, I agree. But let me tell you why I agree, Roberto. I agree because modern education right now, and I was just talking to an Uber driver about this today. He was a history major from Howard University. I said the idea of research and development is now at everybody's fingertips. The computer and, there's a different thing when you are dealing with microfiche and you're dealing with the Dewey Decimal System and pulling out. I said because the research had to be so organic. And what I mean by so organic is like you really had to find the stuff that supported your argument. Going and pasting and cut and pasting and AI and all these things led to the fact of what was out there, which is the fact that education these days lacks a basic ethic for the student and it removed the basic ethic for the teacher. Now that you teach to a test, you teach to a test. You don't teach to potential. We don't teach kids to relieve stress and take oppression off themselves. We don't teach that education is a tool of liberation to the kids. They used to do it, but we don't do it now. And in this whole aspect of talking about why is the Black Muslim in America still suffering today, still struggling today, is the fact that every iteration of these things hits us first. Every iteration. If you're old enough to remember, I remember watching rap albums being laid out in the street and somebody taking a steamroller and running over the rap albums because of the lyrics. The NWA. These are disgusting lyrics. That's when you had to get a parental guidance sticker on the album. And not 20 years later, one of the top rappers is a white guy called Eminem. How does that happen? How does it happen? I'm going to give some credit to Eminem because Eminem's like, I'll tell you exactly how it happened. He said it's racism. Is he a dope rapper? Yes. Would he get the same opportunity if he was a dope rapper and he was black? I don't know. I like to say yes, but the politics are different, especially when you get to the record companies. That being said, it needs to be a little bit more clear. Like I said, our masses are going from being masses to being monuments. And I hate to say this to the African American Muslim community, there are quotients within the Muslim community that are waiting for you to die out. They're waiting for you to not be able to pay the mortgage on the masjid. Even though you've been paying it 29 years, they'll take the other two or the other one. That the boards that we once had, the ShOUT councils that we once had, they're lightweight. We don't have ShOUT councils that talk to the whole African American Muslim community. We don't do that. And what's begun to reveal itself is these breaks. These breaks. I talked about the real Islamophobia is the fact that we have deviated in many regards with our religious practices. And to deviate with religious practices means that you deviated from religious philosophy in terms of what is community building, what is family, what is job development, what is social life, what is economic life, what is spiritual life. And creating these spaces in these conversations, people put things in these spaces. If you leave a hole and it's supposed to be filled with something, if you don't fill it, somebody else will. And over and over and over again, I want to make sure I say this over and over and over again. We've moved further and further away from accountability. You know, we're talking about African Americans struggling, but this is a preamble to the fact that African American people are struggling. I'm sorry, African American Muslims are struggling, but it's an anathema because African American people are struggling. In a place where folks have, we have a hiring shortage. We don't have enough people, brothers and sisters. We don't have enough people to fill the jobs. But you know what is getting filled? The prisons. That we are going to prison in droves again, because people say, if I just had a job, it has nothing to do with you having a job at this point in time. It has to do with you having a role you didn't develop for yourself. And I want to be very, very careful to point out that there are dynamic quotients, corners, and places within the African American Muslim community. They are dynamic, but they're not connected. That in many regards, we have alienated ourselves from one another. And in that space, we don't talk. And if you don't talk and communicate, then you can't, I want to say, coalesce something that's meaningful to begin to address social issues or political issues or spiritual issues. If we don't have that, brothers and sisters, what do you have? You know, and even now, if you look at what's on television in terms of the Muslim image, it's a broken Muslim image. It is an image that can't be inclusive of other stories. It can only be this story. It can only be my narrative, which is a selfish type of thing because your narrative is connected. It's the same as me playing jazz, and I want to tell everybody my jazz I invented, and I want to play like I never was inspired or impressed with other people's musical expression. And we have that now. This is the dangerous part I was talking about. That people look at African American Muslims and they don't know about us. For too many years and for too long, we've had to climb up the flagpole and go, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. We've had to do that. But it's to no avail. Why? Because there's another flagpole. There's tons of flagpoles. And people are not going to turn around and look at you on your flagpole. And I'm talking to the black Muslim community here in the United States. They ain't looking at you for that flagpole. They're not coming. If a ship sinks and land is over there, ain't nobody coming back to get you. You better breaststroke or butterfly or whatever you're gonna get to the seashore, because ain't nobody coming for you. And nobody's been coming for us for a number of years. So this whole idea, in some regards, that we were going to join and rise, and I'm gonna reference Dr. Sherman Jackson, whose third resurrection was immigrant Muslims and indigenous Muslims were going to unite in a meaningful way behind classical theological expressions of Islam. But I'm like, if you ain't really practicing, what you bring to the table? You bring the same dysfunction that's been keeping us separate for all of these years. Now, I'm not a pessimist. But you ain't going to treat me like a sucker. If that's not what's going on, then we need to say that's what's going on. And I'm going to say this to the African American Muslim community. If you're not feeling your brothers and sisters, then damn it, you need to say, I ain't feeling you. And have the conversation from there. Stop this pussyfooting around, trying to be somebody's friend, It ain't authentic. It's not organic. People look at you and go, I definitely want to be. If I do something to you, and there's a reaction that I'm expecting and is justified, and you don't give me that reaction, then you just give me a pathway to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And we demur and we deflect. Oh no! It's okay. When somebody steps on your foot, it's okay to go, damn. Not trying to find some Arabic. No, my foot hurt. You need to say it. This is a community that's dealt with trauma. This is a part of the African American condition. But being a part of African American condition is the fact that despite we've had all this trauma, we've had little miracles happen. Islam and the African American community is a literal, literally it is a miracle. That the religion was hid through slavery, and we found this connection that Islam was actually connected, if you will, to Africa. Is a powerful thing. So I'm not going to keep going too much. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to build on what Roberto said, which is the fact that we do have a fiduciary responsibility to educate ourselves in the language and the intentions that allow us to be the most effective in our communities. If you're doing that, then there are people in the community who are not Muslim that recognize your authenticity. I'm not saying, hey man, throw your kufi away or put your thobe away. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, damn it, you're going to have to lead with ethics. You have to lead with accountability. When we're right, we're right. When we're wrong, we're wrong. It has to be a very pragmatic understanding. And we got to say that this thing is not perfect, but we're working on it. Stop trying to tinker and get the perfect thing. There ain't no perfect Muslims. There's no perfect Muslims. There's no perfect way to practice your faith. There's a perennial way to practice your faith, but there's no perfect way. So, get off that whole thing and find a new narrative, if you will. You know what? A new narrative that says, this is what I am. I met a brother one time. We had a good long talk, good Muslim, da-da-da. He said, I just want you to know, he said, man, I appreciate it. He said, but I'm a heroin addict. I said, damn. He said, yeah. I said, you still shooting? He said, yeah, but I'm trying to get off. And in my heart, I was like, I'm not going to lecture this brother. You know why? Because he just told me everything I needed to know. He told me everything I needed to know. That while he was dealing with addiction, while he was dealing with some aspects of homelessness, while he was dealing with substance abuse, he still prescribed to the fact that there's one God and that his messenger is Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him and his family. These are the two things that we can cling on to a conversation. Why does it have to be anything else? Why do we have to somehow espouse something different? Or we got to do it harder. We got to do it louder. No. You don't have to do that. The accountability is not towards the Ummah. Individually, accountability is towards your Lord. And if we have a collective of people who think that way, then the didactic goes away. People trying to tell us how to do our religion. People trying to tell us about our masjid. And it's not a lot. It's just enough, if you will, to make this point valid. That the community of the man Wafdi Muhammad is Sunni, but it's not gonna become Desi anytime soon, or Arab anytime soon. This is a fundamental understanding of who we are and how we survive and how we got to this point. Brothers and sisters, that's my show for today. I hope everybody's okay and you're blessed. And thank you so much for hanging in there. Shout out to Sister Satana. I hope she's doing well. Keep her in your duas. And I want to make sure we give a shout out to Sister Satana. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To you, dear sister, and your family. So listen, I hope you guys got something out of this. I didn't mean to even go this long. Like I said, it should be a part 1, part 2. But we need to have the conversation.